but spiritual, as though the three had been running from something, or perhaps towards something they themselves didn't fully understand. Now, here's where things started to get really weird. That night, after welcoming the Morrisons into the parsonage, Pastor Phillips made them supper, simple cornbread, salt pork, and boiled greens. The girls barely ate. Rachel, the quiet one, sat staring into fire, unmoving, while Rebecca softly hummed an ode hymn, one Phillips recognized but couldn't place. He later noted in his journal, "The song had no name, no melody I'd heard before, yet I knew it. I felt it, like it had been sung in that room 100 years before I was born." But that was just the beginning. Day 1, November 16th, 1834. Rebecca approached the altar before morning service and asked to speak to the congregation. Everyone assumed she would recite a verse or share a prayer, but instead she said this: "There's a grave beneath the east wall of this church, a child's grave. She was buried there in secret 41 years ago. Her name was Eliza. Her father didn't believe in prayer, but her mother never stopped." People gasped. Elder Thomas Crawley stood up, shaking. He confirmed the story. He had buried his stillborn sister in 1793 with his father's help. Only his now-deceased parents had ever known. The congregation was stunned. No one had ever told the twins about that grave. They had arrived only 12 hours earlier. There was no way they could have known. Day 2, November 17th. Rachel, who had remained mostly silent, finally spoke, and what she said chilled everyone. "There's a sickness coming. 5 of you will fall ill. 2 will not survive. It will begin before the first snow." Pastor Phillips wrote that a silence fell over the church so thick it felt like time itself stopped. And sure enough, within weeks, a fever did sweep through Pine Hollow. 5 congregants fell deathly ill. 2 perished, just as Rachel had said. The others recovered, just like she promised. By now, the town was divided. Some believed the twins were prophets, sent by God. Others whispered about dark forces, witchcraft, something unnatural. And still there was more. Day 3, November 18th. That morning, the twins took Pastor Phillips aside and described in detail a secret buried in his past. Something he had never told another living soul. "You had a brother named James. You found him in the river when you were 7. You told everyone he drowned, but you never said what you saw in his eyes before he went under." Phillips later admitted in his journal this was true, every word, and he had never written or spoken of it to anyone. That evening, Ezekiel gathered the town together and announced they would be leaving the next morning. The twins were too drained, he said. They couldn't handle any more questions. No more tests. But as they departed at dawn on November 19th, Rachel turned back one last time and said, "There's something buried beneath the church. You must dig, not for our sake, for hers." They vanished into the woods, never to return. Their names appeared only once more, in an 1847 ledger from a Tennessee orphanage. Both were listed as deceased. But what happened next? In 1987, the Pine Hollow Church was being torn down. During demolition, workers unearthed human remains beneath the east wall. Just as Rebecca had said, a small child, a girl, buried with a rag doll and a carved wooden cross. Testing dated the remains to the late 1700s, and etched into the underside of the cross was one word: Eliza. To this day, no one knows how the Morrison twins could have known what they knew. How could 2 9-year-old girls accurately describe long-forgotten deaths, predict illness, and uncover the most personal secrets of complete strangers? Some say they were touched by God. Others believe they were sensitive to energies we don't yet understand. And a few, only a few, suggest they were part of something older, something deeper, something we're still not ready to understand. So now I ask you, what if some minds really can touch the unseen? What if the veil between past and present isn't as solid as we think? And what secrets might still be hidden in the hills of Kentucky? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe there's more to this world than meets the eye. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is just one of many dark mysteries we'll be uncovering. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, Not every ghost wears a sheet. Some come smiling, in pigtails, holding secrets no child should ever know, as a way to tie his guilt over the drink to the sorrow of his deepest loss, believing the weight of that memory would keep him strong. But how? How could they possibly know that? This, friends, is the point where the line between the explainable and the impossible begins to vanish. Bell, if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time, because this story only gets darker, stranger, and more impossible from here. Bell, so let's recap real quick. We've got a worn-out preacher, his two 9-year-old daughters, one bright, one silent, walking into a forgotten Kentucky mountain town, and within 24 hours, they've already revealed the exact location of a decades-old hidden grave, a future illness that hadn't even happened yet, and now, a secret so personal, so shameful, even Pastor Phillips' wife didn't know about it. This wasn't just intuition, this was something else. And then came day 2. The sun never truly rose that day. A thick fog clung to the hollows, and the wind carried the distant cry of a fox, or maybe something else. The townspeople were already whispering, watching the twins with a mixture of fascination and fear. That morning, during prayer, Rachel, who rarely spoke, interrupted the service with just 2 words. She remembers. That's it. The room fell silent. Pastor Phillips asked gently, "Who, child?" Rachel turned and pointed toward the back pew, where Miss Eleanor Gray sat, clutching her shawl. Miss Gray, a quiet midwife in her 50s, had lived in Pine Hollow her whole life. But suddenly, she looked like she'd seen a ghost, because she had. Tears welled up in her eyes. She stood, trembling, and confessed to something no one had known. "I had a child when I was 16. I named her Lila. She died within hours, or so I was told. I was told she never cried." "But she did cry," Rachel whispered. "She cried once. And you held her." The room erupted. Miss Gray collapsed. The townspeople wept. And Pastor Phillips wrote in his journal that nothing about those children was natural. But here's the kicker. Later that night, after the girls had gone to sleep, Ezekiel sat with Pastor Phillips and made a confession of his own. "They weren't always like this," he said, staring into the fire. "It started after the fever, when they were 4. I was gone, out preaching in Tennessee. When I came back, both girls were different. Rebecca wouldn't stop smiling. Rachel barely spoke. But they knew things no child should know, things no person should know." He paused, then whispered, "And they dream the same dreams, every night, even if they sleep in different rooms." Now fast forward to day 3. Rebecca, usually the talkative one, was silent all day. At sundown, she asked to speak privately with Pastor Phillips. Here's what she told him. "There's something in the woods behind the church, something waiting. It's not for you. It's not even for us. It's for someone who hasn't been born yet." Phillips, of course, was deeply unnerved, but he followed her the next morning. And there, buried beneath a cairn of stones under a twisted oak tree, they found a lockbox. Inside, a set of personal letters, written by a Civil War soldier named Jeremiah Dunn. He wrote about losing his faith, about the horrors he saw at Shiloh, and about a promise he made to bury his journals so someone in the future could understand his pain. Only, these letters were dated 1862, and this was 1834. How did they get there? Who placed them under that tree 28 years before they were written? That mystery has never been solved. Brain historians, psychologists, even physicists have examined the Morrison case, and no one, not a single expert, has been able to explain how 2 children in the 1800s knew future events with perfect accuracy, recalled memories and traumas of total strangers, uncovered physical evidence that shouldn't have existed yet. So what do you think? Was this a case of divine prophecy? A glitch in time? Shared consciousness? Something paranormal? Or something darker, older, and still watching us from the edge of the firelight? This Sunday's service destroyed an entire town in under 10 minutes, and it was led by 2 9-year-old girls. Pine Hollow had no idea what was coming. The day started like any other. The congregation gathered. The candles flickered. The preacher, Ezekiel Morrison, delivered a fiery sermon on sin, repentance, and the weight of hidden guilt. Everyone nodded. Everyone clapped. And then Rebecca stood up. This tiny 9-year-old girl walked right up to the altar like it was her pulpit and looked straight into the eyes of Samuel Turner, the richest man in the room. She smiled and said, "Mr. Turner, it's not stealing if you plan to put it back, right? Papa says God forgives those who repent." The room went silent. Turner went pale, like white as the church walls pale, because for the last 6 months, he'd been secretly taking money from the offering plate, just a few dollars at a time, to cover bad investments. Nobody knew. Nobody. He had sworn to replace every cent. But this little girl just called him out like it was nothing. And then Rachel stepped forward. She turned her gaze to Martha Whitfield, the moral authority of the entire town, the woman who judged everyone and ran the ladies' Bible study like a courtroom. "Mrs. Whitfield, your husband didn't die in that accident, did he? That's why you hide the letters." Boom. The entire church gasped, because Mrs. Whitfield's husband had vanished 15 years ago. Everyone believed he died in a farming accident, because that's what she told them. But the truth? He ran off to Missouri. And the letters? The ones he wrote back, begging forgiveness? She kept them, hidden, for years. And now the entire town knew. And then it just kept coming. The twins, these two quiet, innocent-looking girls, walked aisle to aisle, row to row, calmly exposing secrets that would have taken most people to the grave. They told Dr. Hayes that 2 of his patients didn't die from illness, but from his bad treatment, because he had lied about having proper medical training. They turned to the Miller family and casually asked, "Why don't you let your son come downstairs anymore? He just wants to see the son." Yeah, the son they hid in their attic. Their own child, born simple-minded, kept locked away from the world out of shame. And then little Rebecca looked straight at young Thomas Brett, smiled sweetly, and said, "You should probably stop visiting Mrs. Carter when her husband's away. Secrets like that don't stay secrets forever." Mic drop. Every single one of these revelations was 100% true. How did the twins know? No one had a clue. There was no time to gossip, no warning, no chance to deny it. Just brutal, perfect truth, told with the innocence of children talking about the weather. And just when Pastor Phillips thought it couldn't get worse, Rebecca walked to the front, placed her small hand on the wooden cross, turned to the entire church, and said this is sacred ground, but it's been stained. The Whitman family didn't die in a house fire, did they, Pastor Phillips? They died right here, in this room, and some of you know exactly why. The room went dead silent. Not a cough, not a whisper. Even the wind stopped blowing outside. The Whitman family? That was the darkest secret in Pine Hollow's entire history. 16 years ago, before most newcomers had even arrived, the Whitmans had vanished in what was said to be a tragic house fire. But the truth? They were murdered in that very church. And the town covered it up. Pastor Phillips gripped the pulpit so tight his knuckles turned white. He knew. He had always known, but never spoke of it, because Pine Hollow had decided, as a community, to bury the truth. And now, 2 little girls just dug it all back up. So now I'm asking you, backhand index pointing right, what would you do if a 9-year-old calmly told your deepest secret in front of everyone you know? Was this divine prophecy, paranormal awareness, or something even darker? What this 9-year-old said next made the whole church stand still. And then someone admitted murder. You are not ready for what happened next. The moment Rebecca mentioned the Whitman twins, hope and faith, you could hear the room stop breathing. These girls had died, or so everyone thought. They were the darlings of Pine Hollow. Perfect, sweet, 9 years old. Their voices led the church choir. They brought herbs to the sick. Their father, Jacob, was a town blacksmith and the unofficial leader of Pine Hollow. Their mother, Mary, was the midwife and healer who never lost a single baby. The official story? A house fire. Tragic. Total loss during a winter storm. Bodies found. Funeral held. The community cried, then moved on. But Rebecca wasn't buying it. She stood calmly in front of the congregation and said, Faith had a birthmark on her left shoulder. Hope had one on her right ankle. Faith always carried a wooden doll their father made her. Hope wore a silver locket with her mother's hair. When they died, Faith was wearing her blue Sunday dress. Hope was in her nightgown because she had a fever. And no one had ever spoken those details out loud. Not in 16 years. And yet, every word was true. People gasped. Some turned pale. Elder Thompson's wife clutched his arm. He tried to stay strong, but his voice cracked as he asked, Child, how do you know these things? And then Rachel stepped up and dropped the bomb. They didn't die in their house. They ran to the church for safety. They hid behind the altar, but they were found, and they were killed. Silence, not dramatic silence. Real silence, like the kind you feel in your bones. Even the wind outside stopped like it was listening. People looked around, afraid to meet each other's eyes. Pastor Phillips's mind raced. Fragment of memories. Whispers cut short when he entered the room. Flowers left in an unmarked spot in the cemetery. Every moment now screaming one truth. They had buried a lie. Then something insane happened. Samuel Turner, still reeling from being exposed as a thief earlier by the same girls, stood up, voice trembling. This is madness. These are just children making up ghost stories. It's nonsense. But even he didn't sound like he believed it, because then came the witnesses. Mrs. Carter whispered, I always wondered about those red stains on the altar floor. We scrubbed for weeks. They never went away. Old Ben Foster. I used to hear crying in the church at night. Thought it was a wind. Now I'm not so sure. And then Dr. Hayes, the same man whose secrets were outed by the twins, spoke up. When we fixed the east wall of the church 3 years ago, we found bone fragments mixed into the mortar. What? That means every prayer, every baptism, every single Sunday service was held on top of the murdered Whitman family's hidden graves. Let that sink in. Ezekiel Morrison, the twins' father, had been silent this entire time, just watching. Pastor Phillips turned to him, voice shaking. How do your daughters know these things? What kind of gift is this? Ezekiel looked down at his girls. I ask myself that every day. Their mother, Sarah, said she had the second sight, but what Rebecca and Rachel see goes far beyond. They dream of places they've never seen. They know things they shouldn't. Names, faces, deaths that were never spoken of. And then he said something that hit like a hammer. At first, I thought it was a blessing. Now, I'm not sure, because every time they speak, the truth hurts. So now I'm asking you, do you think this was a supernatural gift, or something even darker? Do you believe what the twins said? The church thought the drama was over, but what the twins said next broke everyone's faith. You thought it ended at the altar? Not even close. Just when the townsfolk were catching their breath, trying to process how 2 little girls had just ripped open a 16-year-old murder cover-up. The next twist hit like a sledgehammer. The father, Ezekiel Morrison, stepped forward, calm, heavy, like a man who'd seen too much, and now had to let it all out. The knowledge they carried comes at a cost, he said quietly. And suddenly, everyone shut up again. He wasn't speaking as a preacher anymore. He was speaking as a father who was watching his daughters unravel under a weight they never asked to carry. They know secrets no child should know. They feel pain that's not theirs. And every night it gets worse. Then, as if on cue, the girls walk forward, slowly, together. For the first time, they didn't look like prophets or strange little angels. They looked like what they were, 2 frightened 9-year-olds. Rebecca's voice, once full of eerie confidence, now cracked. We don't choose what we see. The dreams, they just come. Then Rachel added, almost in a whisper, the Whitman girls visit us sometimes. They just want people to know the truth. They want someone to remember them right. And at that moment, the entire congregation saw it. This wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about fear. It was about justice. 2 dead girls asking to be remembered. 2 living girls cursed to be their messengers. That night, Pastor Phillips couldn't sleep. He tried to pray. The words wouldn't come. All he could see was the girls, those voices, that cross. Because deep down, he knew something had never made sense. When he first arrived in Pine Hollow 5 years earlier, the records from 1818, the year the Whitmans died, felt wrong. Too clean, too quiet. He remembered flipping through Pastor Hayes's journals. Every birth, every marriage, every cough and cold got documented. But the Whitman family? One sentence. Jacob Whitman, his wife Mary, and their twin daughters, Hope and Faith, perish in a house fire. That's it. No funeral notes. No eulogies. Nothing. And now, the fire inside Pastor Phillips was lit. He sprinted to the church archives and started tearing through the files like his life depended on it. Buried under 30 years of dust and moldy records. He found it, a small leather-bound journal he had never seen before. The name on the front, Reverend M. Hayes, Private. He opened it, and what he read by flickering candlelight would change everything. Inside were entries that made Phillips's hands shake. Jacob Whitman confronted me today. One entry read, he discovered something disturbing about members of our flock. He demanded a public confession, reparation, said if I didn't act, he would. What did he find? Who was he accusing? The entries got vague after that, deliberately vague. Pastor Hayes didn't name names, didn't say what Jacob had uncovered. But two things were very clear. Jacob Whitman had discovered a secret. He had been silenced for it, and it gets worse. One final scribbled line, barely legible at the bottom of the last page. If anything happens to me, look beneath the sanctuary floor. What? He opened a secret journal. What he read proved the church was built on murder. Okay, what you're about to hear is so disturbing. It rewrites everything we thought we knew about Pine Hollow. After the Morrison twins exposed the Whitman family murder, Pastor Phillips couldn't let it go. He dug deep into the church's dusty, forgotten archives, and behind a loose stone in the foundation, he found a hidden leather-bound journal. The name on it? Reverend M. Hayes, Private. What was inside? Let's just say this wasn't a diary. It was a confession. Flashback, December 20th, 1818. Jacob Whitman had just discovered something dark. He confronted the town's leaders, Elder Thompson, Deacon Brooks, the church treasurer. It got heated, violent. Pastor Hayes wrote, there were raised voices, accusations of theft and corruption. Jacob threatened to expose us all. And then, 2 nights later, came the final entry. The Lord forgive us all for what was done. Jacob and his family came to the church seeking sanctuary, but they were followed. I heard the children crying. Then silence. We found them as they had been left. Elder Thompson and the others said the truth would destroy us. I agreed to the plan. May God have mercy on my soul. Skull what? The Whitmans weren't lost in a house fire. They were hunted, cornered, executed in the very church they helped build. And their deaths were covered up by men of God. But it gets worse. Just as Pastor Phillips finishes reading the soul-shattering journal, there's a soft knock on his door. He opens it, and there stands Rebecca Morrison. In the moonlight, hair braided like she's ready for something sacred. She says, in a voice as clear as a bell, you found Pastor Hayes's journal, didn't you? The one he had behind the loose stone. Phillips freezes. She's right, down to the exact location. He hadn't told anyone. How could she possibly know? How did you? He stammers. Rebecca's answer? Faith showed me in a dream. Yep, Faith, one of the dead Whitman twins, had appeared to Rebecca. She said Pastor Hayes was a good man who was forced to do bad things. She wanted someone to know the truth. Broken heart, let that sink in. 2 murdered girls are using the dreams of a living child to deliver justice. 16 years after their deaths. Phillips, stunned, asked the question we're all wondering. Rebecca, what do you see when you dream? Her face turned serious. The kind of seriousness no child should ever carry. We see everything, she says. Not just what happened, but why. And then came the twist that shattered everything. Rebecca reveals. The men didn't plan to kill the Whitmans. They just wanted Jacob to stay quiet. He had found out something they couldn't let get out. So what did Jacob discover? Rachel, sitting quietly in the cabin behind them, still staring out at the cemetery, finally speaks. The money for the church didn't come from donations. Some of it was stolen from travelers who were killed passing through the valley. Bomb boom. Suddenly everything makes sense. The early disappearances, the strange silence in church records, the rumors of robbers on the mountain trails. Jacob had figured it out when he was asked to make horseshoes for horses belonging to dead men. This wasn't just a murder. It was a conspiracy, a theft, a secret society built into the very foundation of Pine Hollow. Rebecca's final words cut like a blade. The church was built with blood money. That's why faith and hope can't rest. Their blood was spilled on ground that was already cursed. Warning, Pastor Phillips, a man who had devoted his entire life to this sacred place, now stood face to face with the horrific truth. His church was founded on robbery, fueled by murder, and haunted by its own victims. And the biggest question of all still lingered. Is this just a supernatural mystery? Or is it a criminal conspiracy that never ended? We're not done yet. Speech balloon, drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Pine Hollow founded on lies? Are the twins gifted or cursed? Could this still be happening somewhere today? Warning, and don't go anywhere, because next time we go beneath the sanctuary floorboards, and what we find there changes everything. The mystery child predicted it. Then they dug it up live. Just when you thought the truth couldn't get darker, Pine Hollow's entire origin story went up in smoke. At sunrise, while the Morrison family was packing to leave, a man appeared on horseback from the Eastern Trail. He wasn't a local. He wasn't lost. He was a lawyer, Thomas Brennan, and he came with a mission that would shake the town to its knees. I represent the estate of one Marcus Webb, he said, and I believe this town was built with his stolen money. Everyone froze, because Marcus Webb was a name that only existed in one place, a secret, buried journal found just days earlier. Brennan went on. Mr. Webb vanished in 1819, and we just found letters he wrote, ones that mention his gold pocket watch. Cracked crystal, initials engraved inside. Only 2 people ever knew that detail, Webb and his brother. Before Brennan could finish, Rebecca Morrison stepped forward like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. The watch is behind the church, she said. So is the money and the bridle. Elder Thompson buried it after what happened on the trail. Dead silence. Brennan turned pale. Pastor Phillips looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. And Elder Thompson? He started walking toward them, slowly, like a man headed for his own funeral. The old man was the last surviving founder of Pine Hollow. You speak of things you don't understand, stranger, Thompson growled. We did what we had to do. We were starving. Our children were sick. The winter was coming. That doesn't justify murder, Brennan snapped. Rebecca's gaze never wavered. The nightmares stopped after the first year, didn't they? She asked softly. You thought that meant God had forgiven you. That's when Thompson broke. No one knows about the dreams, he whispered, voice shaking. Every night, I saw Webb's face, begging me, every night for 30 years. Confession, on the spot, and it was about to get even worse. Brennan demanded an immediate excavation, and this time, Pine Hollow couldn't hide. Men grabbed shovels. The ground behind the church was soft. The twins guided them to an exact spot. 3 feet down, metal clinked. First, a gold pocket watch, cracked crystal, initials MW, just like the letter said. Then, a leather money bag, rotted from age but unmistakable. Then, a decaying bridle, once belonged to Webb's horse. Brennan didn't even blink. This matches everything, he said. We just found physical evidence of robbery and murder, and it's tied directly to Pine Hollow's founders. But what came next? That shattered whatever soul the town had left. Elder Thompson collapsed to his knees. Webb wasn't the first, he whispered, and he wasn't the last. Wait, what? The trail through these mountains, it was perfect. People came through, carrying coin. No one asked questions. No one came looking. We just made sure they never left. So this wasn't a one-time crime. It was a system, a machine of death and silence. The money built the church, paid for food, paid for medicine, paid for survival. But it cost lives. Dozens, maybe more. 2 children solved a 16-year-old mass murder case. With dreams. Okay, this is a part of the story where things go from mysterious to absolutely insane. Pine Hollow wasn't just a quiet town with dark secrets. It was built on a decade-long killing spree. The victims? Wanderers, merchants, settlers, people with the bad luck of trusting this godly community. They came for shelter. They left as ashes in the wind. And how did this all come out? Because 2 9-year-old girls started having dreams. Not normal dreams. We're talking hyper-detailed, historically accurate visions of murder, betrayal, and buried evidence. As the cold dawn broke over Pine Hollow, black wagons rolled into town. These weren't visitors. They were a full-on government task force. 2 federal marshals, a county sheriff, and Judge Jonathan Harrison himself. We've been tracking disappearances along the Cumberland trails for years. One marshal said, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared us for this. They converted the church into a courtroom. Yeah, the same church built with blood money. You could feel the air in that building. Cold, tense, like the walls themselves were waiting for judgment. The first to be seated was Elder Thompson, pale and shaking. Then came the others, the old men who had built Pine Hollow's foundations with bones and lies. But all eyes were on 2 girls, Rebecca and Rachel Morrison, standing in the same church their dreams said had once been soaked in blood. Rebecca Morrison. The judge called out, his voice booming off the rafters. Tell this court exactly how you knew where Marcus Webb's gold watch was buried. And Rebecca? She didn't hesitate. She didn't flinch. Faith Whitman told me in a dream, she said. She said the men who killed her family were the same ones who murdered the travelers. She said she wanted the truth to be known. Dead silence. The judge stared, his mouth slightly open. He turned to Rachel. And you, young lady, how do you know details about crimes that happened before you were even born? Rachel's voice was quiet, but her words, chilling. We don't know why it happens. The dreams come to us. We see everything, the fear, the pain, even the lies people tell themselves. We feel it. Direct hit boom. That was the moment everything changed. Judge Harrison leaned forward, visibly shaken, not from fear, but from realization. Are you saying you communicate with the dead? That's when their father, Reverend Ezekiel Morrison, stood up. Your Honor, he said, steady and calm, my daughters have never claimed to understand their gift. They just speak what they're shown. In town after town, they've described crimes no one else knew about, victims whose names were never spoken. They're not guessing. They're remembering. Even Sheriff Mackenzie, a man who'd never believed in anything he couldn't put in handcuffs, was stunned. I don't believe in ghosts, he muttered, but I believe in confessions, and I've never seen guilt hit a room this hard. And the people of Pine Hollow? They were cracking. You could see it. In their eyes. The trembling hands. The darting glances. It wasn't the girls they were afraid of. It was the truth they had buried. So what happens next? Faced screaming in fear, a secret map gets revealed. Pick a second dig begins behind the parsonage. Skull and what they find changes everything. We're going to show you the next part of this unbelievable case in Part 6, where the Morrison twins uncover a second graveyard, one that wasn't even marked on the town's records. Warning in what's buried there? Let's just say, not all of them were travelers. Backhand index pointing down comment below. Do you think Rebecca and Rachel are psychic? Or is something even darker going on? Bell subscribe, hit the bell, and don't miss what we uncover next. Because some towns are built on secrets. But Pine Hollow was built on something worse. They predicted 13 murders, then pointed to where the bodies were buried. Live. Okay, so this wasn't just another ghost story. It was a confession 16 years in the making, in a church that was supposed to be sacred. By the time Elder Thompson stood up, his hands were shaking, his voice breaking under the weight of what he was about to admit. We killed 11 travelers, he confessed, and we buried them where no one would ever find them. The room fell dead silent. Even the hawks circling overhead went quiet, as if the earth itself wanted to hear this. But then, "There's more," Rebecca whispered. "Tell them about the babies." "Wait, what babies?" Elder Thompson collapsed to his knees. "Mary Whitman was 8 months pregnant, with twins," he sobbed. "When we killed her, we didn't just kill a mother. We killed 2 unborn children who never got a chance to live." That's when the judge's gavel slammed the pulpit like thunder. "Are you confessing to the murder of 6 people that night?" Judge Harrison demanded. "Including 2 unborn babies?" "I am," Thompson said, barely audible. "We did it. All of it." The courtroom wasn't just stunned. People wept. Others looked around like the building might collapse under the weight of this buried truth. But then the girls spoke again, and this time they blew open the final piece of the puzzle. Judge Harrison stared directly at the twins. "If you really have this gift," he said slowly, "tell us where the other bodies are." No hesitation. Rebecca stepped forward, her voice soft but chillingly clear. "There's a dry creek bed beyond Widow's Hill," she said. "The bodies are beneath the old tree stump. 11 graves, 1 for each man. And the preacher, Mr. Collins, he's wrapped in a wool blanket with blue stitching." Everyone turned to stare at Sheriff Mackenzie, who pulled out his weathered notebook. "Marcus Perry on a wool blanket, just like that," he muttered. "Blue stitching. Unique. His wife had made it." That's when Samuel Bradford, another one of the co-conspirators, cracked. "Oh, God, they know," he whispered. "It's like they're watching from the other side." Rachel's voice echoed. "They are watching." Now imagine being there. Fire inside that 100-year-old wooden church. Drop of blood listening to 2 9-year-old girls calmly deliver exact details of murders. Evergreen tree, and then describe where to dig. "You'll find a silver ring on the finger of the man you buried last," Rachel said. "He was from Baltimore. He begged for his life." And the worst part? All of it checked out. So what happens next? Fearful faced, the townspeople gather at dawn. A search team hikes up Widow's Hill. And by sunset, they start to dig. And they don't stop until they've found every last body. That's in part 7. And you won't believe what else they uncover under that tree stump. They dug under the church floor. And found what? After 3 days of digging, the truth finally surfaced. Underneath the very spot where they had sung hymns, prayed, married, and buried their dead, they found bones. Not 1, not 2, 3 full skeletons, exactly where Rebecca Morrison said they'd be. Movie camera cut to a shovel striking wood, then bone, and a gasp of crowd that finally realized the girls weren't guessing. They were right. Police Scarlight One body had a gold ring with the initials JP. Scroll that was Joshua Patterson, the land surveyor who vanished in 1818. Briefcase the second, a silver-handled knife belonging to William Morse, the merchant whose wife had traveled across 3 states looking for him. But it was the third skeleton that dropped jaws, because wrapped around its neck was a copper cross, the exact one worn by Robert Chun, a traveling minister who had gone missing while carrying money to build a church in Tennessee. The same cross his family had described in their letters, down to the scratch under the left arm of the crucifix. Rebecca had described that detail 2 days earlier. This wasn't intuition. This wasn't luck. This was impossible knowledge. Brain, but it was real. Sheriff Mackenzie and Judge Harrison stood silently, their faces pale, their eyes filled with disbelief. "This isn't just murder," the judge whispered. "This was a system, a campaign. These weren't accidents. They were investments." Because where did the money go? Elder Thompson finally spoke, his voice barely more than a breath. "We used it to build everything. The church, the school, the mills. We told ourselves if we used blood money for holy work, God would forgive us." But when asked about the families of the murdered, it wasn't Thompson who answered. It was Rachel, quiet, calm, like someone repeating what she'd heard in a dream. Marcus Webb had 2 sons and a wife named Elizabeth. She cried herself to sleep for 5 years straight. Samuel Collins had a fiancée named Catherine. She waited for him until she died of sickness. She never loved again. Each name she gave at the crowd like a hammer, because she wasn't just listing facts. She was reliving their grief. "We don't just know them," Rachel said softly. "We feel what they felt even when they died." At that moment, the courtroom cracked in a way no one could have predicted. People sobbed. Some ran out, and others just stared as if their entire belief system had been shattered. "You mean to tell me," Judge Harrison said slowly, "that these girls knew what even our sheriffs, pastors, and historians didn't?" Pastor Phillips could only nod, his voice trembling. "And I've been preaching for years, standing right over their bones." As the church emptied in stunned silence, the Morrison twins stood alone, dwarfed by the pulpit, exhausted from carrying centuries of pain. "Papa," Rebecca whispered, "can we leave now? The voices are getting louder. It's hard to keep them all straight." Ezekiel Morrison wrapped his arms around them. "Soon," he promised. "But first, we help him understand." Collision, and now everything was out in the open. Blood, bones, and generations of guilt. The town's very foundation, built on murder money. Pick, and there was more. More digging. More bodies. More names. The full investigation stretched over 2 weeks. But on the 4th day, Judge Harrison reconvened court. "This community was founded on blood," he declared. 11 innocent travelers were killed. Their possessions were used to build this town. And then, to hide it all, the entire Whitman family was murdered. The camera pans to the 3 old men, Elder Thompson, Samuel Bradford, Marcus Perry, standing in shackles. They didn't speak. They couldn't, because deep down they knew the town they built with their hands was soaked in the blood of people who had once trusted them. So here's the question we leave you with. Question mark, do you believe the Morrison twins were psychic? Question mark, or were they guided by something else? Something not even science can explain? Backhand index pointing down, tell us in the comments. Here's a Mr. B-style rewrite for this powerful courtroom and aftermath scene. Fast, emotionally charged, and suspenseful, perfect for grabbing and holding YouTube viewers' attention. The church that hid a bloody secret for 16 years. And the shocking verdict that changed everything. Pastor Phillips sat frozen, heart pounding, as Judge Harrison laid bare the truth that rocked Pine Hollow to its core. This community, the judge declared, was built on the blood and stolen gold of innocent travelers. The wooden walls seemed to close in, the air thick with disbelief. But then, a small voice cut through the tension. Rebecca Morrison, only 9 years old, stepped forward. "Judge Harrison," she said, calm and clear, "may we talk about forgiveness?" The courtroom hushed. Every eye locked on the twins. "We forgive," Rebecca said, looking directly at the men accused. "Fear made you do terrible things." Rachel added, her voice steady, "But forgiveness doesn't erase what must come next. Justice. The families deserve that." Judge Harrison nodded slowly. "Then justice you shall have. Elder Thompson, Samuel Bradford, and Marcus Perry, your trials begin immediately." "But what about the community?" Ezekiel Morrison, worn and wise, rose with a heavy heart. "Your Honor, sins of the fathers need not doom the children. If this town chooses repentance and truth, it can be redeemed. But it starts with confession, restitution, and genuine change." Pastor Phillips found his voice for the first time since this nightmare began. "This church must be reconsecrated. The remains beneath our floors must be honored and laid to rest properly. Victims' families will be compensated, and a memorial built so no one forgets." Solicitor Brennan, flipping through his thick legal notes, spoke up. The Marcus Webb estate alone is owed significant restitution. But Elder Thompson, frail and shackled, whispered back, "The money is gone, spent over the years on church upkeep and families. We have nothing left." The judge's decision hit like a sledgehammer. The church, school, and all buildings built with stolen funds will be sold. The proceeds distributed as best we can to victims' families. And Pine Hollow, as it stands, will cease to exist. The room erupted into a stunned silence. Families who had called Pine Hollow home for decades faced losing everything. Their church, their homes, their entire community. Then Rebecca dropped the most chilling truth. "Judge Harrison," she said, "the crimes didn't stop in 1820. Silence fell. Rachel stepped forward. The mine shaft where some bodies were thrown. It's not just a forgotten grave. People are still disappearing along those trails. The killings continued. Sheriff Mackenzie sat upright, alarm flashing in his eyes. Are you saying this evil, this method, lives on? Rebecca nodded solemnly. The original killers are old, but others learned the trade, the techniques, the hiding places, the way to erase evidence. Knowledge like that doesn't just die. Shock waves rippled through the courtroom. If true, Pine Hollow's horrors had spawned a legacy of violence stretching beyond memory. Judge Harrison's face hardened. Sheriff Mackenzie, expand the investigation now. If others have suffered, we must find them. As the court moved forward, the Morrison twins stood quietly, burdened yet relieved. They had been the voices for the dead, the truth no one else could speak. Ezekiel knelt before them. Are you ready to leave this place? Rebecca's eyes scanned the worn walls, the cross. The faces changed forever. The voices are quieter now. Faith and hope can rest. Rachel squeezed her sister's hand. But there will be other places, other voices. A small voice whispered, Papa, why we have to carry all this sadness? Ezekiel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I don't know, little ones. But maybe God gives burdens only to those strong enough to bear them. The Morrison twins' final legacy, a story that still haunts Appalachia. As the Morrison family packed up to leave Pine Hollow, Pastor Phillips faced the toughest choice of his life. Should he stay and help rebuild, or walk away from a town soaked in betrayal and blood? He watched Rebecca and Rachel, just 9 years old, walking hand in hand, carrying the weight of unspeakable truth with grace and forgiveness. And in that moment, he knew there was still hope for redemption. 3 weeks later, Pine Hollow was gone. The church dismantled board by board, sold to compensate victims' families. The townspeople scattered across Kentucky and Tennessee, burdened by the terrible secret that their entire foundation was built on innocent blood. But something else began to spread. Stories of 2 young girls with knowledge no one could explain. Voices for the dead. Instruments of justice long overdue. Some dismissed it as frontier superstition. Others believed it was divine intervention. The Morrison family kept traveling, bringing spiritual renewal and impossible knowledge to every community they touched. Whispers followed them. Secrets unearthed, mysteries solved by 2 tiny prophets. Judge Harrison's final report, a staggering 47 pages of crime spanning more than 2 decades. His closing words still echo today. This case challenges everything we believe about justice, truth, and accountability, sometimes reaching beyond the grave itself. Science couldn't explain where Rebecca and Rachel got their knowledge, but every single detail they revealed, unquestionably true. What remains the most chilling is not the past they uncovered, but what they hinted about justice itself. If the dead cannot rest while their killers go free, if innocence holds power beyond death, then maybe moral consequence doesn't end with life. The Morrison twins vanished from records by the 1840s, mysterious until the end. Some say they carried their father's ministry across the frontier, a beacon of truth and justice. Others believe they learned to hide their terrible gift, living quietly away from the world. But legends endure. In the remote Appalachian hills, travelers still speak of twin sisters, 2 girls who know secrets no living person should, who speak with the dead as if they were right beside them, who remind the guilty that some justice goes beyond earthly law. Are these the same twins, or their spiritual legacy, or something even stranger? No one knows. One thing for sure, truth is like energy. It can't be destroyed, only transformed. And sometimes it finds voices, tiny, innocent voices, willing to speak for those who no longer can. The files on Pine Hollow, still locked away in the Kentucky State Archives. Judge Harrison's notes, Sheriff Mackenzie's evidence, Pastor Phillips's journals, all confirming the unbelievable facts. But the greatest mystery, how 2 9-year-old girls knew what no one alive could, remains unsolved. Do you believe the Morrison twins spoke with spirits? Could their knowledge be natural, just beyond our science? Or is there something bigger, darker, more profound at play? Backhand index pointing down. Tell us your theory in the comments. If you're brave enough to face the unknown, subscribe and hit that bell for more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew. Because sometimes the most innocent voices carry the most devastating truths. And some secrets refuse to stay buried.